is the testing of web services. So if you come to Eclipse, what do you need? I mean, this is a URL, right? And if I come here and see, this is how I've hit it. Now in Eclipse, if you go and see, you have these client classes. So these client classes, you can set the request, you can run it, and you can test. So it's not necessary that you get, I mean, will like you. So it's not necessary that you have to test it via SOAP UI. But once you do it from here, like you'll have to see in the logs, right? Now, if you have to run like say 1,000 requests, you'll have to programmatically do that. Here in SOAP UI, you can actually go and put all those requests one by one, and can run it in one go and expect for the wait for the output. So to answer your question, you can obviously test using Eclipse. You can obviously test using your own code also, like you can write your own UI. But SOAP UI just eases the testing. So to give you a reference, I was once I developed a tool. REST service, I think you can. I have never done it personally, but I was seeing some what do you say? Like when I was creating, I was seeing that they used to ask for some REST services. So you can obviously test it. I think so, but I've never done it personally. But to test REST, you have these REST clients which comes built in, like say in Mozilla and all, you can download the plugin to test the REST client. And normally I've seen people using it, not the SOAP UI. But I think it should have the support for that also. It should not be that much of a big deal. Now, okay, yes. So Aarti, what I was saying is that for this one, um, yes, I lost the track. So once I was developing a tool, and this tool was that again for the same customer I was talking earlier, was that like say the WSDL also used to change sometimes, and they wanted something which is independent of the tool. So I developed a sort of UI where you can actually configure which all web services and operations you want to test, and then a sample XML you have to upload, in a sense that not WS or sample XML for a particular operation. And then like say in the UI, if it is add customers, you'll give all the customer details. And I used to go and like once you click on submit, I used to go and use those values to be replaced in the actual XML, the sample XML, and send the request over to the web service host, whether it is a local server or something deployed in some server. I used to send it there and get a response back. So in that was what used to happen was, uh, and then once you get the XML response back, I used to filter out the things from there and show it in the UI that your customer this, with the customer ID this and this has been created. So what this used to do is that it used to act as a good filter for some business person also who is not aware of any of the internal details and doesn't want to be, doesn't want, and like nobody wants to get involved in the details of which they are not related to, right? I mean, you will not be involved in the nitty gritties of marketing if you are doing the coding, because that's not a core job. So this tool they used to use to directly like run various examples from there, like various samples. And this tool did not use a WSL at all. So what goes to the server is just an XML, and it goes to a particular URL. So by giving us an example, what I mean to say is that SOAP UI is not a necessity in testing. You can use SOAP UI, you can use Eclipse, you can use any other tool, you can develop your own tool as well. It's not a necessity. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, and one more thing, it's just an UI, right? It doesn't come with the server. You're still using your Tomcat.
Correct. So wherever the service is deployed, you are using that. So it's just a normal, you can say client side tool.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's move ahead. So we'll go back to the example which we have here and then take it from there. Now let's go one by one and see what this all is all about. So one of the first class which is open here, the hello world client, that is actually used for testing. Okay, So once you have the service up, you can test from here. Okay. Now the first line creates a URL. The second line is actually binding. When for creating the service, you need the URL, and you need the uh, the service name, the hello world IMPL service, and like what is the namespace for that, which is also called, this particular configuration is called as queue name. So you can say that it basically is referring to the service name and the namespace which is used to access that service, because these are the two things which makes a service unique. Like say the service name is fine, but that service name can be there for more than one number of times. So namespace plus service name makes a service actually unique, makes it uniquely identifiable. And if you provide these two parameters, that is actually known as queue name, and using queue name and the URL, okay, you can create a service. Now once this service is created, okay, and if you see the Java doc here, it very clearly says that service object provides a client view of a web service. Service acts as a factory of the following proxies for target service endpoint. Okay, so you basically are you will hit it here. Okay, you will create the URL here, and you will invoke APIs on this particular class. But this in turn is going to make an actual call to the which is to the actual deployment. To the actual service. So just for you, it acts as a service. Okay, and then you can add handler chains, etc. And those things we'll see later. But that's how it is. So this service, now you have to get the actual port. Okay, now why you have to get the port? So the reason you have to get the port is because, if you remember, now port is the one which maps a particular URL. There is only where you give the URL and the operation. So you have to get the particular port. Now on the port you have the operations defined, then that operation you can invoke, like the way it is being done here. Now for a moment we'll forget about this particular part and we'll just see that how this works. So let's do a right click. See again the same stuff. There we had given the name as Raghav, here given as WhatsApp. It gets printed. Okay, so we'll come on this part later, but first let me explain the other parts. So this is a normal way of accessing this service. Now this publisher is what is keeping the service up. If I remove it, see this is coming as red. So it means that this is still running. And what this does is it just endpoint at publish and it's publishing. Just saying that hello world IMPL is the one which is which actually is the class which has to be invoked when you get a request for this particular service. So that is the requirement. Okay, so nowadays it has become very easy because Java itself comes bundled along with the jars which are used for web service development, and it gives you a way to publish and all. So the JDK gives you a way to publish and all, so which is good, because if you see that this service is up, so now this service is up, meaning that this JDK is acting as a kind of web service hoster as well. So it's a kind of mini server which is available. So JVM is giving you the capabilities, some of which are available as a server. So that is what my take on this hosting part is. So earlier in the game, it was not part of JDK. There's no web service standard defined by Java. The first web service, and web service is just a specification, because you have a WSDL specification, so that is outside of Java, and that's not a Java specification. Java created a specification out of it and included in itself, and that specification is known as JAX-WS, basically, which means that JAX-web service. So Java defined this particular web service. Now, since this web service, I not only defined the specification, it also provided a default implementation. So that implementation is defined, and we follow it. It has greatly simplified the coding, development, testing, etc. You don't have to import extra jars. But earlier that was not the case. You had to import other jars, and they were also fine. It was not that it was having some issues. So the web service which I used initially. The web service jar was Axis, AXIS. It's still there in the market. You can search on the internet also. And the Axis jar is very. I mean, it's also based on similar concept. There you have to actually, like, say, run a particular class for deployment, and then that class used to generate a file. That file used to call as server config.wstd. Now this file you have to include in your application. So that is basically used for deployment of a web service. And the thing is that the access used to come with a particular project, because you see this deployment, right? It is nothing but since you can access a WSDL. I mean, if I think if you just access like this, it should also give you like hello, this is a web service or something on that sort, because that is what used to come in the case of access. So if you just access that particular URL, it used to give you just a message that this is a web service, something like that. See here, it has changed a bit. It gives you some information about the web service that never used to be the case with access. I mean, earlier they might have changed it. Here they will just give a message, hello, this is a web service. So that kind of message used to come, and then that kind of message, if it comes, like if you see like this, what this signifies to you. Now this is nothing but a UI, right? So since it's a UI, there has to be some sort of web application which is built in, right? The web application has to be there. So Access used to simplify this development. So it used to, like, you have to import the Access project. Access used to have that web.xml, and from there you can like plug in your web services. So I mean, that's how you used to enter the web service. And then along with web.xml, the other part was server config.wsu, which used to have all the web services defined. I mean, which are deployed in that particular server. So that's how you used to do configuration earlier. But nowadays it has changed. With JAX-WS, you do this and it gets deployed. But the thing which is to be noticed is that here we are just using JVM to do the deployment. So it means that JVM is acting as one of the mini servers, because it's even rendering the UI for you. Because if this is coming, it means that somebody is showing you is giving some sort of response to this particular URL, right? So there's some sort of web application which is also working in the backend. So that's the information which I wanted to give you, just to open your mind. So when you see all these things, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions, right? So let's move ahead. Now this is the actual web service. I mean the actual what do you say, port, right? So this is actually port. So this is a service point interface, what is being called as, and here you define everything. Like say where all the operations are defined here. Now this Hello World IMPL is actually the implementation, right? So for where you define the I mean the details for it, like whatever goes inside the Hello World. So if you run it, you get this Hello World JAX-WS. This is actual implementation for it. Now before you move ahead, I wanted to show you one thing. Like say if I run it and let's run it again. Now I'm getting a request, sorry, a response. But if you remember, I mean, we have, like in the case of SOAP, this is what we learned, that we should have a request XML and we should have a response XML. But here you're not able to see it, because, I mean, that we're not printing it here. So if you want to print it, right, if you want to print it, you have to go and do the configuration, okay? So not configuration, this is that if you want to print it, there are several ways to do it. I will discuss about it. But just if you want to see it without much configuration, if you just want to monitor the request and the response XMLs, there is a way. And what is the way? Like it used to come along with Access also, and I don't know when it became part of Eclipse, but it did, and it's very helpful for everyone. So if you go to Window, then go to Preferences, then go to Run Debug, and then TCP IP Monitor. So if you come here, you can add actually a port. So what is this port is that all your request is going to get forwarded through this particular TCP IP monitor for a particular for things which you configure. So here we have defined the port number, if you remember, was 499999. So if what you can do is that you can define the local monitoring port as 8888, and here you can define the host name, like say local host, and then you can define the port number. Okay. Now once this port number is defined, what this means is that if you hit any request on this particular URL, it will get redirected here. But whatever is getting hit here, you can see the request. You can basically monitor whatever is coming on this port. So that is the idea of this TCP/IP monitor. So if you, this is what I've already done. I'll do edit just to show you. So this is a port, okay. And whatever request comes here, you can see whether it's an XML, Java object, whatever, you can come and see. And then that once you see it, because this is just a monitor, the same request is forwarded further, okay, and then you do it. So one more feature which I want to tell you was, and here I do not see it because it just comes with like say bundled along with Eclipse, but this used to come as what do you say? As one of the like separate applications which used to come bundled along with Access. Now there you can monitor, and you can also see, like say if you want that if such a request comes, and only when you click on like say resume, it should go forward. So once you click there, a request will show up on the UI, the TCP/IP monitor UI, like this is a request which is coming in. And if you want to modify that request, you can do edit, go and change some of the parameters, again click on submit, so it will go to the server. So here you can only view, but TCP/IP monitor provides you more features than that. So it's very helpful if you want to like test without, like say if you have developed an application, there's some changes. Now that change has already been done by the second party and you want to work on it. Now just to test whether it is working fine from their end or not, you have to go and do all the changes. But if you just want to test the thing, you already have an application, maybe you can use that same data, and at the last moment you can change one or two fields which they have extra added or modified, and here you go. Okay. So anyways, this configuration I've already done. This is out here, and if you see the status, it is stopped. So I will start it. Okay, and I will start it, and I started it. Okay, now I'll end it. I'll close this window. Now this service is up, but if you see all this service is going to, there's 4 nines. This is a particular port which is being used. Okay, so if that is the case, if that is the port number which will be used, but the port number which we've configured is 48. So how does the request go there? So for that we have to do some changes. So we'll stop our server for a bit. Okay, and we can deploy again, but let's stop for now. So what we'll do is that instead of accessing on this particular URL, we'll access on this one. Now here the thing is that this service, if you do not define, this URL has already been defined here, right? So this URL has already been defined. So if you use like 4 8s here, right? That's where your your service is going to get deployed. But you do not want your service to get deployed on localhost colon 8888. That's just a monitoring port. Your service should be here. Okay, but if you try to access that same URL, like say localhost colon 9999 from here, it's going to directly hit a service. A TCP/IP monitor is not even going to come into picture. So you need TCP/IP monitor to intercept the request. Okay, to intercept the request which is coming in, right? So to intercept the request, you have to use this localhost colon 8888. Okay. Now if you use this, it goes to TCP monitor. From there it goes to 9999 port. So if that is the case, right? How do I use it? Because if I just do, if you forget these 2 lines, and if I just do hello.get hello world as string, now here if you see, the service which I'm using is on this particular URL, right? But the thing is that once you get this port, that is the one which gets executed. So in the sense that if I come here and see, yes, so if I come here and see, I mean, the endpoint URL, right? So if you come here and see, since I've changed it here, right, to 8888, that is the one which will get used. So you'll have to again change it, because say I do it like this, right, and then I'll publish it again. Now your publisher is running, right, and I come here and then you do run as Java application. If you see a TCP monitor came into picture, you got the response as well, right? So what's happening? So what's happening is that if you see this port number 8888, right? Now this 8888 is where it's coming as, and it shows this hello world as WSGL, because this is what we are hitting here, right? This is what we used to create, to get the URL. Okay. Now, since that is a call, when I did, we can see the request. There's nothing in the response. I got the WSGL. So this is a response which gets generated out of this entire thing which we have done, which is same as this particular WSGL. Okay. Now, if I go back to this one, now my next call was that if I use hello, this service, then I need to hit this particular URL. So if you see, I should have actually, the call should have actually gone to this particular URL, right? And I should have seen it, but it has not gone. The reason it has not gone is because the URL which is being used for this particular hello world, it is being published in a different location. Okay, so this is being published, the endpoint publisher of the URL is this one. Okay, localhost 9999 ws hello, right? But here, I mean, the URL which you're using, if you hit that, and that is the URL which is getting hit. So if you hit that, you can directly get the response, right? You never get the request and response which you want to see. And the thing is, ideally, this service, whatever you have created, should have worked, right? But because of the WSGL, see, if you see the WSGL, you will notice here, and that is what I wanted to show you as well. If you see the WSGL, the service which is there, right, and the port, this port has a SOAP address belonging to it. So once you get the port, so whatever URL you use here for creation, okay, creation of the port, hello world. I mean, it was fine till we got that thing, and this is just a proxy. But once you get the port, you know that from the WSGL that this is a SOAP address which has to be used. So this location becomes hard coded. So it will directly, I mean, since it is used, it's configured here, whatever URL you give in the beginning, that is not going to get used. So since the service is active here, you're getting the response, but that is not the point. The point is that we wanted to intercept the request. And the thing is that, let's think from the practical perspective. The practical perspective is that if we use a web services and if we use it in production environment, so basically during development there would be a separate dev environment where the URL is hosted. You want to hit there. There is a separate QA environment where you want to point to if it is a QA environment, and separate different environments for different staging environments, including production. So if that is the case, you do not want to go and modify this particular XML every time to match to the request where you want to hit. So what is the way out? The way is out there. So once you get the port, what you need to do is that you need to modify the URL where it's hitting. And to hit that, there is one URL which is already bound to this particular port, and that is called as binding provider, right? So this hello, just from here you can get the request context, and whatever is this particular endpoint address property that you can override. Okay, so here, I mean, let's override it to 8888. So once you do this, it means that this is the URL where you have to hit, and once you hit that URL, TCP/IP monitor is just going to show you what is coming to it and what will go through it, but it will forward the entire request to the next one, which is 9999, right? So let's go and run it. See, this time you got an extra. This one is for the first call. This one is for the second call. Let's clear it to show you like in a proper way again. See, the first call is for WSDL. The second call is for the actual request XML. So this is a request XML which is going, and this is a response element which we are getting. And one thing more which I used to use SoapUI was for formatting. You can copy it actually there into the formatting. Okay, so if you see, this is what I think I pasted a request on both the sides. Is it? I think so. Right, so this is a response. Okay. Now this is a response. If you see, this is what even SoapUI does. This is a request it creates, and this is a response it sends. So SoapUI is nothing but, you can say, a sort of way to give you a way to access the WSGL, the web service. But apart from that, there is nothing else which is out there which can be taken care of, right? So here you're passing some of the parameters, you're getting some of the response back. So you can see the request and response XML also here, which was not the case in the case of here. But again, using TCP/IP monitor, you can override that particular thing. Okay. Now, so this is a way to, like, say, like, override the to see the request and response XMLs. But the thing is, there's one more way which I wanted to tell you, and I don't remember it very clearly. Give me a moment. Yes. See, you can see the handler change is there. So your next question can be that TCP/IP monitor is not part of the normal deployment. It is just extra tool which is going to Eclipse, and so it is fine that I can see the request and response XMLs here. But what about in production scenario? Because in production scenario, we did not see the request and response in the normal running, right? So how can we see it? right? So the way in which you can see it is that to act upon a particular, uh, like say, the call, the request XML which we send, and the response XML which we get, we define a handler chain for that. Like these are the things which will work on the request once it goes and on the response. So it works on a similar concept of as that of servlet filters. So what it defines is basically SOAP handlers. So you have to implement interface message handler, and that message handler once you implement, right, that has like say like on message method. So this on message, there you go, and the message which you get, you can like change the values there. And the name of the message is SOAP message, and SOAP message is one of the internal classes of JAX WS. So SOAP message, you can go and change the endpoint, or you can just log the message. So this thing you can do for the request, and this handler chain is applicable for both request and response. So once you do that, the same handler chain, you can check that if it is a request, SOAP message is a type of request. Then you print the message. If it is a type of response, you can also print it. So you also have the option to print only in the case of request, or only in print of response, or in both the cases. So basically, handler chain or the handlers which you configure gives you more what do you say, more handle over the request and response XMLs which are coming in. And one of the common usages of such a request, such handlers are to log the request and response response XMLs in real world production scenario. Okay. Otherwise, there's no direct way, right? I mean, if you see, if I remove TCP/IP, there is no way I could have accessed it because I was not even seeing it in the console, right? Uh, let's go back to the WSDL and see what are the things we discussed. How did we uh, like act on it, and like what is one-to-one parallelism which we can draw from the WSDL, the action implementation, and whatever uh, we learned yesterday. But before we start doing that, let's take a pause for a minute, right? And then I'll ask you if you have any questions, and then take it from there.